right. For today's opener, I said I'm like a good 30 minutes behind where I want to be right now. For the opener, the modern reptile, anything from like a gecko to a green anole to a crocodile, it had a specific common ancestor. Do y'all remember what that thing was called? It didn't start with a C, not this one. I don't remember. The modern ancestor to all dinosaurs, all birds, all reptiles, just period, or anything that's related to said reptiles, called an archosaur. Arche or archo, meaning old. That was insects. This is this one, I think. Mammal, reptile, bird evolution, yes. But the archosaur has not changed much. When it comes to the crocodilians, they look almost exactly the same as their ancestors from 250 million years ago. What about the modern mammal? It does start with an L. It is list something. Lystrosaurus is what that thing was called. Now that's going way, way, way back at the time of the archosaurs. The Lystrosaurus or Lystrosaur, however you want to pronounce it, it doesn't matter to me. That was a therapsid. Now they eventually went extinct, but their descendants ended up becoming that shrew-like organism that we developed from, that made it through the Cretaceous extinction. That's the only section of notes that I have not built yet, is the actual, oh, this is not animated right. Let me fix this. I forgot to tell it to do it. Top click. Fix it here. Like I said, my beautiful blue merle Australian Shepherd decided to sneak out underneath the fence. Those of you that are online, give me just a second because I forgot to tell it my paragraph. It's simple mistake. Something that I would have fixed this morning, but paragraph. They can see what I'm doing and y'all can't. And today is fairly beefy. I'm doing what I could spend in a month's worth of time in 7 days worth of lecture notes. Oh, there went the heater. Paragraph. Gosh darn it. Why did my dog have to sneak under the fence? I swear. Hold on online. Give me just a second. Okay, now we're done. That was yesterday. Yesterday, we ended with the fact that we're in the middle of a sixth extinction as far as insects are concerned, particularly the honeybee. But what we're focusing on today is, I probably should have done each one of these individually, but I really wanted to stop the messes I was doing right before spring break. That way you're free from me for all of spring break. I've said this multiple times. Mammals and dinosaurs started evolving at about the same time. Give or take 220 to 230 million years ago, mammals evolved from the therapsids, things that were essentially half mammal and half reptilian. your dinosaurs and your lesser reptiles, including your crocodilians, which are way older than dinosaurs, evolutionarily speaking, evolved from the archosaurs. Archo or RD meaning ancient or old. Birds evolved from these. Chickens and turkeys are an unbelievably old organism as far as their evolution is their lineage is. The only one that I know of that is more dinosaur-like is called a cassowary. I have not been to the Fort Worth Zoo since I was y'all's age. I know the Houston Zoo has them. They have this huge dinosaur, almost toucan-like thing on their head, this crest, just like dinosaurs. They're not quite as big as an ostrich, but if you've ever seen one, which I didn't build into these notes, I probably should have. If we have time, I'll show you an image of it. They're most definitely a modern dinosaur. That's what happened to them. Most dinosaurs died out. The ones that were evolutionarily equipped to be able to survive the Cretaceous extinction turned into birds. The few aquatic ones that survived, we still have them. Those are our alligators and our crocodiles and caiman and all the other different species of the crocodilians. So the rhapsids, Lystrosaurus is our great granddaddy, grandmommy from 250 million years ago-ish. They did not survive through the entire part of the Mesozoic. They died out. Dinosaurs, which we're actually starting dinosaur evolution tomorrow. Dinosaurs became your apex predators. They killed off all of the rhapsids. With the Lystrosaurus, their descendants, as they were trying to deal with this dinosaur threat, became smaller and smaller and smaller. Eventually, when it came to the Cretaceous extinction, our more modern ancestor from give or take 65 million years ago was something very similar to a shrew. That is the ancestor of all modern mammals. But if it wasn't for Lystrosaurus, we wouldn't have existed. So Lystrosaurus was the therapsid that made it through the Permian extinction. What?
I was going to say, which one did you say is the earliest?
Lystrosaurus is the one that made it through the Permian extinction. Okay, its descendant, that little shrew thing, which I'm gonna have to read it to pronounce it, started with an M. That is the forefather of all mammals, and we literally came from something that looked like a rag, 13 centimeters long, itty bitty little thing. Like I said, I haven't built the extinction notes yet, but all of the big things, your Apatosaurus, your T-Rex, your Triceratops, all of those organisms, they were doomed. They couldn't get underground. They couldn't get into caves. They couldn't hide. Our ancestors, these little rat-like looking organisms, they could. And there's a very good chance, which we don't know what time of day that the Baptistina asteroid fragment hit the planet, but there's a very, very, very good chance it struck during the day because most mammals became nocturnal. They couldn't compete with dinosaurs. But they ended up surviving. All right, Dicynodons. These things essentially were the cows of the Mesozoic. Yesterday we talked about plants. The horsetail was your most common source of nutrition for all of these cow-like organisms, things And we're talking about everywhere from Triassic through Cretaceous. The Triassic dinosaurs were just a lot smaller. The Cretaceous were a heck of a lot larger. So your ankylosaurs, your Triceratops, your Stegosaurus, most dinosaurs were herbivores. That's of course not what y'all think of. You think of T-Rex and Allosaurus and Spinosaurus. You think of these big predators, but most of the Jurassic and Cretaceous, most of the large cow-like organisms were herbivores. Once again, with the Triassic, they started off small. As the herbivores had more food, they had more oxygen. It was warm. As they became larger in size, so did the things that fed off of them. Trying to figure out what. Oh, there is one more. Most of your herbivores had a turtle-like beak. I'm sort of going a little bit ahead of myself. Somebody asked, and I can't remember who it was, what was the largest amount of teeth in a dinosaur's mouth? With your hadrosaurs, they had over 900 teeth. They were crushers, okay? They weren't pointed. And this may be one of the few classes that I forgot to bring up my mosasaur teeth.
Good morning, teachers. Please pardon this interruption. We have
Okay.
some students that we need to report to H4 for telephone testing. Students, please be listening for your name.
Wait, what is it?
Jocelyn Alfaro,
Telpos.
Michelle Cognac,
I
Giselle.
don't even know what Telpas stands for, but it's like
Iva,
a non-native English-speaking person,
Julissa
basically
Montoya,
is what it is. Oh, gosh.
Selena Perez, Ivan Vega, Jared Torres, and Manuel Rodriguez. If any of these students are currently in your classroom, please send them to H4. Thank you.
Okay, so most of your herbivores, they either had a whole poop ton of teeth, like the hadrosaurs, over 900 teeth, or they had something similar to a turtle's beak, where they just sort of chomped down and then pulled whatever said plant material in. I'm pretty sure this is the class that I did not realize that I have mosasaur teeth. I've got 4 mosasaur teeth, which was a marine reptile. I need to go back and double check the time period of it. I'm pretty sure mosasaurs were Jurassic, but I have to fact check myself. Like I've said before, there's no book for this class. I'm literally pulling everything out of thin air. So Lystrosaurus, this is this big, ugly hippo thing. It had 2 tusks, but they weren't used for chewing. Nobody really knows why they had them. Very, very similar to hippos, although hippos are unbelievably mean. Hippos killed more people than crocodiles do. But a lot of these particular therapsids, they all eventually went extinct. A lot of them had these basically functionless tusks, but then they had a turtle-like beak that they would use to be able to eat whatever the vegetation was. And the horsetail was the primary source, at least from what I've seen, the primary source of nutrition. Yesterday, we talked about the sago palm and the ginkgo. Both of those plants are 100% toxic, at least to us. Were they to dinosaurs? Don't know. That kind of thing cannot be preserved in the fossil record. It just can't. But Lystrosaurus had very splayed feet, so widespread toes, and the more surface area that their foot would take, the better they were adapted to the swampy, marshy kind of environment, so they wouldn't sink down into the mud. I have not checked the attendance in this class. Let's see. Raymond, Chase, Erica. I think Erica's the new one. Sarah, Cameron, Colton. And I've noticed a couple of emails that, like I said, my beautiful blue Merle Aussie got out of the fence this morning, so I'm about an hour behind schedule. If you emailed me and I've not gotten back to you, I apologize, but I will get to it for the third period. All right, therapsids, these were basically half reptile, half mammalian. The Lystrosaurus was one of these. That is you go back 250 million years, like great, that many millions of years, grandparents. The cynodonts were the evolutionary advancement of these organisms. They started getting smaller and smaller and smaller. They didn't want to be food for said dinosaurs. Eventually, most mammals, these little rat-like looking organisms, were so small that, with the exception of the velociraptor, which was way smaller than what y'all think Jurassic Park did Velociraptor wrong, they left most mammals alone. Most dinosaurs, not all, most of them hunted during the day. Most mammals then adapted to be able to go and look for either plants or insects during the night. And therefore they weren't a food source, at least not as readily of a food source for most of your dinosaurs. I could go into huge depth on how we know if it was a mammal or a reptile right now, but I'm not with mammals, I will with reptiles. The structure of the jaw and the skull, how many bones are fused and how many bones can actually move, how many holes do they have for the ear, that's what is the specific differentiation between a mammal and a reptile. Like I said, we're not going to go too far into mammals. We're going to focus more on reptiles right now. We'll do more with mammals when we get into the Cenozoic. I know we'll have at least one lesson where we do human evolution, the different types of hominids, difference between Cro-Magnon and Neanderthal, and Gigantopithecus, and all of those different predecessors that we've had. These images on here, this is as far as the one that made it through the Paleozoic, the one that made it through the Permian extinction. We're related to this thing. Lystrosaurus, which was a dicynodont, which was the predecessor of cynodonts, which are these weird looking cow things. That's what we evolved from, at least according to what everybody says from evolution. And I know some of you are not necessarily an evolution person, but unfortunately I have to approach it this way. Their feet, like I said, they're very splayed. The more surface area you have to stand on, the less chance you're going to have to actually sink into something like a marshy, swampy environment, which is what allowed these organisms to exist. I've already mentioned this. Mammals became small. They had to. If they didn't reduce their body size, they would have been a source of food for said dinosaurs. Most dinosaurs just ignored mammals. They went after other dinosaurs as far as the predatory type, things like T-Rex, things like Spinosaurus. Our little shrew ancestor, Megazostrodon, I'm gonna have so much fun pronouncing all of these different dinosaur names because it's been forever since I've done any kind of Latin. But this little rat critter, which I'm gonna show you an image, I'm almost positive on the next slide, only 13 centimeters. So you've got literally this big, like not even the length of my hand. That is our direct ancestor that apparently all mammals radiated from. It was nocturnal, most likely hibernated. And like I said before, there's a very good chance for the mammals to have risen and then, well, dinosaurs were messed up anyways. They were too big, they couldn't get underground. But if the mammals arose, then there's a very good chance that they were already asleep when that asteroid struck. The documentary that I have that's going to take 2 days explains, at least from what we believe, I said we can't go back in time and watch it, how horrible the environment was on land. And within about 5 to 10 minutes, if you were a big dinosaur, you were dead. You couldn't survive. You were either literally flayed from your skin, or you were cooked alive. It was not, they couldn't protect themselves. They were too large. They couldn't do anything. But these little puppies, these little rats that were related to, could. That is our mammalian ancestor. That's the ancestor of dogs, cats, us, bats. This is what apparently we are all stemmed from. Like I said, it had the ability to go underground. It was nocturnal and it hibernated. The only thing that we know for sure is that Baptistina, the fragment of it, slammed into the plane off the coast of the Yucatan Peninsula, the Chicxulub crater. Go way back the first 6 weeks right now. But yeah, we all came from rats. Most likely ate insects, plants. If it could get its hands on paws, whatever you want to call it, claws, whatever, feet, on eggs, it would have been an omnivore. Which is what we are too. I know some of y'all don't like to eat meat, but we're omnivores. That's the way that our teeth classify us. Oops. Let me go backwards. There are 3 major classifications of organisms that are not dinosaurs. You've got your ichthyosaurs, the things that look like demented dolphins. They're not fish, they're reptiles. We have what you think of as the Loch Ness Monster, the plesiosaurs. They are not dinosaurs. They're older. And then we also have the flying reptiles, all of the pteranodons. We will be doing dinosaur evolution tomorrow. Those 3 branches from archosaurs are older than dinosaurs. There is a very specific point when you had a change in the way that the pelvic bone is oriented that sort of denotates Dinosauria proper. You had some that were bird hipped, where the pubis was facing backwards, and you have others that were reptile hipped, where the pubic bone, like the pelvis, was actually pointing forwards. And then when it comes to the reptilian ones, we actually have 2 different splits on that. We've got ornithixians, the things that are bird hipped, like Ankylosaurus and Triceratops, Stegosaurus, the cows, if you will. They were all herbivores. And then you have the opposite one, the ones that were more reptile hipped. You had the really big, long-necked sauropods, like the Brachiosaurus and the Brontosaurus. And then you had the things that ate them, the theropods, like T-Rex, Allosaurus, Spinosaurus, Velociraptor. Most, like I said, most dinosaurs were herbivores. They were not carnivores. It's just you guys all know about the ones that decide to go and eat things. This is a primitive Archosaurus, very, very similar to modern day crocodiles. The big difference is the length of the legs. Most Archosaurs, the front limbs were shorter than the back limbs, and that's true today too. If you've ever seen an alligator or a crocodile, that they're sort of sloped towards their head. The ancestor to our crocodile, 70 centimeters, for those of you that are in here, is this long. That's it. So like a baby alligator. So shorter than we are tall. All crocodilians come from something similar to this organism. They have not changed much. They haven't had to. Their body style was pretty much perfect, just like the shark. The shark has not changed much either. It just got smaller. In this case, with this particular organism, crocodilians got larger. And most crocodiles and alligators don't get above 20 feet. I'm sure some have, but most don't. Snakes and lizards, they all developed about the same time. Mammals and the first dinosaurs were in the middle Triassic. Your modern lizard, like a gecko or like a Komodo dragon, they were in the late Triassic. It was not. Turtles, all of these things, they developed at the same time period.
Are we on the same thing? They're Cretaceous. There's the biggest crocodile was 33 feet long.
Oh, I haven't gotten into all of those. No, we're gonna do that eventually. I can't. As far as dinosaurs are concerned, it's gonna take me 3 days to do it. Tomorrow is the evolution. Thursday is gonna be the Triassic, which are the itty bitty ones, and the Jurassic, which got larger. And then Friday, which I honestly thought the asynchronous day was the 12th. I messed up. It's the 5th. Some of these huge crocodile, these sucus, they all in sucus organisms. Yeah, some of them were nasty and huge. Like eat you and not even think about it, one bite kind of thing. Somebody asked me when I was reading all of the writing prompts about Megalodon. Megalodon is Cenozoic. That the largest of all of the sharks that we know of, it doesn't fit in here. So you're gonna have to wait till after spring break to be able to talk about that guy. Well, if you've ever seen the picture, they're on the internet, you literally can put two people standing on top of each other inside Megalodon's mouth and not touch the teeth on the top. Absolutely huge shark. I mean, the teeth were this big. Huge. It'd be awesome if I could purchase myself a Megalodon tooth, but I'm sure they're rather expensive. But so I'm not going into depth with this with mammals, but I will with reptiles. The amount of holes, essentially, in what you think of where your ear is, helps determine what type of reptile it is, or mammal like reptile for that matter. If there are no holes at all, the "an" means not. That's what the prefix "a" or "an" means in Latin. And apsids do not have holes. Turtles don't hear like we do. They have ear holes, but they don't hear like us. Synapsids have one hole. Like I said, the therapsids eventually went extinct. Diapsids, di meaning two, and meaning none. You would think they would use mono, but they don't. They use syn. The Latin's just different. So no holes for hearing are turtles. Turtles swim, tortoises sink. You put a tortoise in the water and it will die. It can't swim. Synapsids would be your mammalians, one whole, and the diapsids are going to have two. This is right there. This is a sword. Almost there. I need to go through and tell people what they're missing. By the end of the Triassic, most organisms were established. They may have changed size. Most insects were larger, they got smaller. Most mammals were smaller, they ended up eventually becoming larger after the Cretaceous extinction. We're just not ready for that. That'll be next Monday for the extinction event. Your first turtles couldn't pull inside their shell like they do now. That was just an evolutionary adaptation that occurred later. This particular turtle, I'm not even going to try to pronounce Proganochellus. Is how I would pronounce that. I know just enough medical terminology to be able to pronounce at least letters together. This particular turtle had a few features that were different. Turtles don't have teeth. This one did. Things evolutionarily changed. They lost them. Also had a primitive ear that most turtles do not have. I know turtles make noises. I listened to Galapagos turtles try to make babies when I visited the Philly Zoo with my 3-year-old daughter, and they, of course, were doing their turtle thing. We thought it was lions roaring. No, that's not what it was. It was the male Galapagos turtle trying to make babies with the female Galapagos turtle. But anyways, aside from that, your early turtles did not have the ability to pull themselves up inside their shell. That was just an evolutionary adaptation that happened over time. All right, Archaeopteryx. You've probably heard of this thing. This was one of the most important transitional species that we've had. If you would take its feathers off, it definitely was a theropod. It was a dinosaur that was feathered. The huge, important difference with Archaeopteryx was the fact that it had hollow bones, which lightened its skeletal load and allowed it to most likely glide through the air. Somebody asked me with the writing prompts about the evolution of flight. There are two major theories. I'm about to get into it in just a second. There's either they started in the trees and they learned how to glide, okay? Or the other one is they started on the ground, and as they picked up speed, they learned how to lift off. We don't know 100% which way it was, but from the fossil record, we're pretty sure it was ground up, not tree down.
So how big is
Most dinosaurs have feathers.
How do they know that book is flying?
Well, with Archaeopteryx, the way that its skeletal structure was, it wasn't like a bird flying. It would have been more of a glider, being able to jump gaps between cliffs or being able to get to a different niche. But it wasn't like what you think with a bird. The bone structure, if you will, in the hand for the wing was not developed correctly with Archaeopteryx to be able to fly properly. All right, so the two major, and this is answering whomever it was that asked about the evolution of flight. Flight either happened because the organisms were in the trees and they were trying to go from one tree to another, So it would have been from up to down, sort of like a sugar glider where they jump and they push their arms out and have that little skin flap and they can just sort of coast. That's the arboreal. That's what arbor means, is tree. Or it started from organisms that were on the ground. They became bipedal, like us, let their arms be free, which were now feathered, because we know now that most dinosaurs had feathers in some way, shape, or form, freed up the hands, and then if they jumped, as long as they had enough speed for takeoff, if you will, they could coast. And the consensus right now is it actually started from the ground to up. And quadrupedal, things that had to be on all 4 feet, like a brontosaurus or a triceratops, there's no way that they would have taken off into the air as quickly as something like a velociraptor. And like I said, we'll get into the types of dinosaurs the rest of this week. Jurassic Park lied to you. The velociraptor was yay tall. That's it. The size of a turkey. The one that they based their velociraptor off, the Deinonychus, that was completely and totally different. Things on 4 feet, quadruped, quad 4. Quadrupeds would not have been able to have taken off. They needed all 4 feet to be able to move. Like I said, a bipedal ancestor, something such as the velociraptor, would have been your predecessor to be able to actually fly. You get enough speed, enough running speed, and you take off. Sort of like a hang glider. Two more. Like I said, I could probably spend a solid month on Mesozoic, and I've smushed it into 7 days worth of information. All right, so for flight, once again, this is still answering whomever it was that asked the question, because I can't remember. They were either trying to escape things that were trying to kill them. They were trying to catch food sources specifically, particularly insects, which could fly. They were trying to go from one niche to another for whatever reason. Maybe there was better food source on the other side. Don't know. The hind legs, if you're bipedal, if you've seen Jurassic Park, that big killing claw on the back leg, it allowed for that adaptation to occur. And like I said, it allowed them to go from point A to point B, to be able to get a better food source, better habitat, maybe for rearing offspring. It would be awesome if we had a time traveling device and we could actually go back and watch all of this stuff happen. We just can't. We can't go back in time. We can only go forwards. So most of what we focused on has been more earlier in the Mesozoic, more the Triassic and the very early Jurassic. In the Cretaceous, the one that had the Triceratops, the one that had T-Rex, only specific organisms were alive at specific times. The Cretaceous saw a huge development for avian adaptation. If this didn't happen, then we wouldn't have our modern dinosaurs, which are our birds. That's what they are. Perching feet, so not just walking, but the gripping onto a stick kind of foot evolved in the Cretaceous. They lost teeth. The only time that a bird has a tooth now is when they're born, and it's on the top of their beak, and it helps them break out of the shell. Other than that, birds do not have teeth. They do not. We had flightless birds, and we also had swimming birds, very similar to penguins. All of these things developed within the Cretaceous. There's not. Let me freeze this. And if it wasn't for these adaptations, then they wouldn't have made it through the Cretaceous extinction. So once again, reduction of size. These things were still adapting. Take a look at online here real quick. I don't see anybody else. Let me check. Grades. Bandwidth is so slow today. Okay, I'm gonna go to you guys. The one from the 26th on Friday, I believe is still open through this evening, I think. I'm missing the opener from Otis, the opener from Caden, the assignment from Eastside, both Erica, that child's not in this class anymore, opener from Dylan, and then both from Colton. The one from yesterday, which is still open through the next 2 days, I'm missing both from Otis, both Caitlin, Sarah, Caden, assignment Eastside, both Braylon. No, I apologize, Braylon, you did yours. Both Erica, opener Dylan, and then both Colton, which is what I'm missing. And then we have what, 6-ish minutes left.
Is Colin online?
He